Hi and welcome back to my channel. I'm Romica, I'm an illustrator and a mother of two toddlers, and I'm sharing my breastfeeding journey, or the end of my breastfeeding journey, with you, and the ups and downs, and how I went from, after a few days of starting to breastfeed and thinking I would probably never manage to continue this, to ending this journey after 3 years and 4 months. So how I stopped breastfeeding, but also how I started feeding and how it went throughout. So if you're more interested in the beginning and the struggles, if you can relate with that and want some encouragement, then that's in the beginning. And if you'd rather hear about how I stopped feeding my 1.5-year-old toddler, she was a bit older actually, almost to 20 months old I think, then if you're more interested in hearing how I've managed to gently and very respectfully end our breastfeeding journey, then stick around towards the end. I will put a timestamp in the description and in the comments, and I hope you I hope you can find some value in this, me sharing this. It's a vulnerable journey because I know breastfeeding can mean so many things to so many people, and there's a lot of pressure related to it. I definitely felt that, so I want you to come away encouraged. If maybe you didn't manage to breastfeed with your first or however many children, it's definitely still possible, and I hope this can encourage you, but also know that I can definitely relate to the struggles in my own way, and I know everyone's journey is different, but that being said, I just want to share my journey with you, the beginning and the end. It started raining, so I wonder if you can hear that. But yeah, let's get started. So I have some notes here, so I'll look down every now and then. And if I remember, I might not look directly at the camera actually, so I hope you don't mind. So I have two toddlers, like I said, and the first one was obviously the start, or not obviously, the first one was my start of my breastfeeding journey, and that was in 2020, just before the lockdown in England happened. I had my first son, and I prepared really well for the birth and had an amazing birth experience through the Bradley method, and thankfully with my husband and with my mom who were present, and it was a natural birth. Immediately could have started feeding, and like the perfect scenario basically. However, I was not prepared for breastfeeding. I thought I don't need to prepare for it, and I didn't realize how susceptible I was to maybe not just misinformation, but maybe my own ignorance. I didn't really know exactly what I was doing, and I thought it would just happen naturally, and it can definitely be like this. However, there can be hurdles, and you might have experienced the same, or maybe you know someone. Anyways, I will just share how it was in the beginning for us. So he was feeding okay in the hospital, and because it was a natural birth and there were no complications, and I had a 2nd-degree tear, but that could be, sorted, I was able to leave the hospital around midnight, and he was born around 3 p.m. in the afternoon anyway. And from that time on, it was all good. I put him to the breast. However, what I feel like I made a mistake with, and I'm not entirely sure, is that when my milk started to come in around the 3rd day, leading up to that, so I had a lot of milk starting to be produced. The colostrum started to kind of turn into the follow-on milk. Not follow-on milk, what's this called? I don't actually remember the terms anymore, so forgive me. I just mean like the more mature milk. I don't remember what exactly it is, but basically your breast milk does change, and I would like to refer you to The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding by La Leche League. It's a charity of women that are dedicated to breastfeeding, and it's a valuable resource, and I feel like that's where you can really educate yourself about how breastfeeding actually works, what kind of hormones come into play, what's normal, what might be concerning, and how to get help. So I think that is a really great resource that I want to just put in the description and also out there. They also have a website, they have local support groups. Anyway, I only got that after I had struggles, so I kind of wish I would have had that before. So if this is something you are interested in preparing to breastfeed, I think education is just very valuable, because what I didn't do is I think I took too many breaks between feeding, and my mother and my husband kindly let me sleep, you know, a few hours at a time. But I think because my milk was coming in and I didn't know how to deal with it, like my breasts were really full, and what happened is I started to get a really kind of buildup of milk. I don't know, it was clogged or something. Basically, mastitis was basically developing. I didn't have it just yet, but I was in pain, and my nipples were completely flat. So the midwives were trying their best. I had breastfeeding supporters coming in, but basically my baby couldn't feed properly anymore. And hand expressing didn't really work. It was just that particular breast, I think, very dense tissue in general. And it was difficult to feed from my right breast. I think I made it worse by not feeding frequently enough. And I thought, oh, it's just for the baby to be fed frequently. But I didn't realize it was also for me, because I basically made my breast so full that my baby couldn't latch. And before, he didn't have any issues. So that was a mistake that I made. And with my second baby, I was feeding quite frequently on demand, and I never had any real problems like I did with my first son. And yeah, so the midwives came in, thought I had like an overproductive breast, you know, milk supply, that I might have to, because it was so excessive and so big and painful, and my baby couldn't feed anymore. Even with a pump, it was challenging, you know, like a expression that one midwife even suggested that I might have to go to the hospital, have an electric and hospital grade pump the milk off, and then stop feeding. And I was like, how is that possible? I went from having this amazing birth, having the best, you know, foundation to breastfeed, to a few days in, 3 days, or basically 4 days in, I don't know, it was the next day, having these horrible issues with my breasts, with one breast specifically. My baby can't feed, my baby cries, and there was this huge emotional thing about my husband thinking I'm just pushing through because I want to breastfeed, and I'm not having my son's, you know, best interest at heart. And that wasn't true. I really wanted to breastfeed for the many benefits that breastfeeding has, the immune benefits, the nutritional benefits, the benefits also for the mother. Of course, it's a whole package, and again, that's I think quite well described in the Womanly Art of Breastfeeding. And again, I think if you really want to breastfeed and you're having struggles, educating yourself why you're doing this is really crucial. So that's how I managed to then convince my husband to be on my side and not go onto formula immediately, that it's worth pushing through despite all the struggles we had with my breast not being able to, like him not being able to feed. It was just ridiculous. I had all kinds of things being done to me, and I think all of this could have been prevented if I would have educated myself a little bit earlier. Anyway, it was really coming to the point where people have there was a bit older midwife. She was very experienced, but also using a lot of old methods. And she was using something called nipple rolling. And that was probably the most painful thing I've experienced in my entire life physically. So it was more painful than the birth, because the birth wasn't very painful due to the Bradley method that we used. And yeah, it was horrible, and I was sleep deprived. I was in pain. Couldn't feed my baby. I just felt like a total failure. And this another midwife then told me, after this torturous experience that I had, that this wasn't necessary. And she handed me a hand pump, had told me how to express, because I didn't even have a pump, and to feed from this breast that I was struggling with, expressed milk through a bottle to Leo, and the other breast just feed him. And that's how I went for a few weeks. I don't remember how long, but basically that actually helped me to regulate the supply on both breasts. This breast started to become normal again. The things that I've been told about that I have, so to speak, inverted nipples, although of course I knew this wasn't true, because before pregnancy I didn't have any. I know this is a lot about nipples, but this is just, motherhood and feeding has to do with that. But the things that people have told me, the things that I have let people do to me because I wasn't educated, now I just can't it's a double face palm moment, because I could have prevented all of this, and I'm so certain that it happens to so many other women, that we're going into this a little bit naively, and then there are so many different opinions, and we are in a very vulnerable state, and because we don't know any better, we trust that advice. But there is a lot of conflicting advice. And also the thing that I've learned later is that even breastfeeding supporters that have learned how to breastfeed tell you to cross cradle feed and all these different things that actually are proven by another midwife I will share with you, that they cause, so to speak, nipple trauma. So your nipples crack, then you start to bleed, and then you can get infected. There's so many things that can happen by feeding, like the way you feed, the way you hold your baby, and you prevent them from feeding properly. That can lead to mastitis. Anyways, there's a lot of things that can happen. So I urge you, if you're struggling right now, there's this La Leche leak, but also there's what's her name? Robbins. I think I will put that in the description, but there is something, a breastfeeding resource that I used with Mila, because I didn't want to have that experience again. So with my second baby, that helped me to have no problems. So with my second baby, I had no issues. So this was first baby. All these horrible things happened in the first few days of his life. And for me, that was very traumatizing. But we went through it, and we were feeding all the way until my second baby was born. So you see, once I've bought this book, that I realized, okay, why do I want to breastfeed? Why is it important to me? What's actually normal for feeding? When I learned how to express this milk properly, that was already kind of clogged up because I wasn't feeding frequently enough. And once I trusted my own guts a bit more and was feeding lying down, and realized actually babies they know how to feed, and to just let them and not prevent them. That's the main thing. Once I realized how to do this, feeding was much easier. And I had later on no problems feeding. I was feeding him all the way until he was about, again, 1 year and 20 something months old. And then my second baby was born. And I did inform myself much better with before Mila was born, because again, like I said, I didn't want to have the same problems. And I think, what's her name? I will put it as a name here, but this person is a midwife. She made her doctorate about how to prevent nipple trauma, basically, and what are the ways women are taught in hospitals by breastfeeding professionals to feed that actually causes nipple trauma, damaged nipples, people stopping to feed. And I used only one video really, and which I'm sharing in my birth story, which I will link below. And that made breastfeeding a breeze. Like, I didn't even think about breastfeeding being a problem. So I went from feeding one toddler to tandem feeding. So that means that you feed 2 or more children simultaneously, like when you have twins, for example, or when you have a toddler like I did and a newborn. So that was, I just informed myself about tandem feeding. Again, I will link that book below. And I was full on intending to tandem feed. However, with Leo, although he did start sleeping through the night for the first time when he was 13 months old, and that's different for every child developmentally, it really depends. He had a really strange episode before Mila's birth and woke up a lot. And while also after she was born, although I was feeding both of them, Leo just kept waking up. And of course, this could be a response to him having not as much attention anymore and knowing that there's a new baby around. Basically, I just realized that tandem feeding wasn't the way for me, that I just can't, one baby wakes up, then I feed that baby. Half an hour later, the other baby woke up, the toddler woke up, then I fed that baby. So basically, I just didn't get any sleep, and I thought I'm gonna go crazy. And that's when I realized Leo is old enough. He can drink well from cups. He is nourished. He just wants the comfort. And I realized I just can't do that without sacrificing my health. And I have obviously a newborn. And there might be ways to go through this. But for me, I realized this is the decision I'm making. I will end that breastfeeding journey for Leo. But of course, I had a newborn where I just kept going. So basically, seamlessly, I had 3 years and 4 months seamlessly breastfeeding. And yeah, so then with Mila it was fine, feeding was good, everything went well. I observed that new way of feeding, tried to not prevent Mila from feeding properly. When the milk came in, I took some supplements, soy lecithin, or there's sunflower lecithin, basically a supplement that, again, I will link below. Please do your research. I'm not a medical professional and everyone is different, you know, if you have an allergy against certain things. But there are ways to help when you have a buildup of milk, or, you know, when you are not experiencing mastitis, but to prevent mastitis. There are different things you can do when your milk comes in and you're engorged. That's what the word is. So to help with engorgement when the milk's coming in. And I was able to go through this. Of course, I was very scared because of my previous experience, but engorgement wasn't really such a big issue. I was hand expressing, I was using this supplement that makes the milk thinner, so it's less likely to block your ducts, your milk ducts. And then, yeah, I just kept feeding all the way until the time when I stopped feeding, which was in June, on the 20th of June. That's my notes now. I had a wonderful breastfeeding journey, and there were many times where I felt that people also close to me were telling me that this or that issue with my child is caused by my breastfeeding. And you might encounter this as well if you have people who might not have been able to breastfeed for a long time, or never have, or they tell you they've never been able to, so that's why you, maybe as their daughter or child, can genetically not breastfeed for whatever reason. It's very, very, very unlikely that this is the case, because it's not actually a genetic inherited thing. It's actually a very mechanical and hormonal thing. So that if you understand how breastfeeding works, you will be able to breastfeed. And there, like I said, there are rare medical cases where you might not be able to for whatever reason, but you definitely could. Of course, it's everyone's decision if you want to, because it's a big sacrifice. And I couldn't go everywhere, I couldn't eat everything, I couldn't drink everything. There were definitely limits that I had when I was breastfeeding, and I was willing to do this. And not everyone might be willing to do this for their own personal reasons, and I totally understand. This is okay. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying inform yourself if you want to. And don't let anyone tell you that you can't, because they might have not been able to. Because again, your body is different. Even if your own mother tells you that you can't do something, you are not just your mom's genetics. You are also your dad's, half. There are different factors that come into play. And I think if you do educate yourself, and if you really want to, there is a way. So that's why I would like to point you again to these resources that I will link below. The thing about the midwife that's teaching you how to prevent nipple trauma and how to hold your baby, what the hormonal things that are coming into play. That's very important, that you understand how milk is produced and how you can increase or decrease your milk. It's amazing. Our body is incredible. And yeah, so this is just what I want to put out. I feel like I'm rambling, sorry. But basically, I came to the point where I did actually agree that after a certain time, I had almost half a year of very, very, very horrible sleep. Suddenly, Mila started to have so many episodes of waking up frequently, constantly, and there was nothing else that was wrong. She did get her teeth, but that wasn't enough reason for her to wake so frequently. And once she finally managed to drink from a cup herself, when she was able to hydrate herself, I realized, okay, I think maybe it is worth stopping feeding her, because especially at least in the night, because it was just not good for her. She was always grumpy when she woke up because she had really bad sleep, interrupted sleep. And I just realized for me that I am okay with letting this go. I loved breastfeeding my babies, but I really felt deeply that this is okay now for me to finish. And also for the sake of her sleeping better and having tried everything else not working, that this is now the time where I think she was about 20 months. So it's similar, 1 year and 20 months old. So going towards 2 years old. that it's time now to end this. So I didn't know how I would do this, because with Leo, obviously, I kind of just stopped and Nick took over. This was, you know, that's how he started sleeping through. We literally brought him to the in-laws with my husband, and he just waited until he was too tired to fall, and they fell asleep without the breast. And with Mila, she has spent many hours also without me, sometimes, you know, 2 hours, maximum 3 hours. So she was used to not always having the breast already. So she wasn't feeding super frequently during the day, but in the night. And so she wasn't weaned in the day and she wasn't weaned at night, but she definitely was feeding less frequently, considering she was already eating and she was drinking from a cup. So the weaning process, so the actual weaning of the breast, was much faster than if you would, for example, start when they are still under a year old, or for whatever reason you need to stop for this or that reason. It might be very different for you, but I hope that if you are stopping to breastfeed around a similar time, similar age of your child, then you will maybe find that this is true for you as well, or at least it gives you a pointer. So I decided to stop on the 20th of June. And the first night was unexpectedly going really well. So Mila, I was just cuddling her. I was giving her lots of comfort because I knew that's what she actually really wanted. I made sure that before she went to bed, she had a glass of milk or like something, you know, that I don't remember exactly, but something to drink. So she's definitely hydrated. And then I was just cuddling her a lot. And I think she woke up maybe once or twice, but again, cuddling her and, you know, singing gently to her, that helped, and she slept quite well. So I was like, hey, this is going great. And during the day, I then 24 hours later, so I was trying to see how it is with my breast. So I didn't want to get, because if you stop radically, it is possible that you can get mastitis, you know, so an infection. But so I was very aware of how full my breasts felt, and I kept checking how heavy they were and, you know, how I felt, but I couldn't see any real signs. And then only once, about 24 hours later, I started to feel like it's getting a bit red, maybe, or a bit heavy, and I feel a lot of pressure. I gave her a feed around 10:30, so that was after I stopped 24 hours later, 10:30 a.m. the first feed. And then I felt again, maybe it's getting a bit full again, and that was on the same day at around 9 p.m. So 10:30 and 21:10, and that was the second feed. And then that was on the 21st of June, sorry. And then 2 days later, so this whole time after this 2 times feeding, I didn't feel the need to feed her. I didn't feel like my breasts were too full. I didn't feel too much pressure. And I was also taking that soy lecithin again to help, you know, prevent any duct blocking. And because I don't have any allergies, again, I feel like I always have to make these kind of medical disclaimers that please inform yourself before you take any supplements, and, you know, that are not maybe suitable for you. But this helped me, and again, do your research about, you know, what supplements might be helpful, but that helped me, I think. And so I didn't feel the need to feed her again, and she took it quite well. The second night, however, so again, not feeding her for an entire day, she was raging, like gently caressing her, nothing helped. She was so angry, and understanding that it is a form of loss. Of course, she lost that connection in some way, this form of connection, and I think she was truly grieving that loss, and it was really hard for her. But because I understood this, I wasn't angry myself because I could kind of see it from a distance and try to be there for her, and just accept that it is a hard journey for her to now understand that this is over, and that this is just what it is. So that was a really challenging night, the second night. We went through it. Then again, another day without feeding. And then on the third night, I decided that maybe because of the night before being so challenging, that it is better that her daddy is next to her, you know, lying next to her. on the bed, and that she just saying we actually have a mattress on the floor, and it's a firm mattress, a big mattress, and so I was always lying next to her. That's how we did it. But again, inform yourself about bed sharing and safe sleeping and co-sleeping, because there are definitely a lot of things you need to think about when you do these things. But for us, this worked really well with Leo, and it worked really well with Mila, and that's how we've done it, and it's been brilliant for us. However, we also don't take any drugs and don't take any, we don't drink any alcohol. So all these things that could potentially be very dangerous if you do these kind of things, it's not the case for us. So again, inform yourself about safe sleeping. And, but so he was next to her, he was with her. And that night went really well. I think she just, as soon as she saw my husband, Nick, she probably realized, man, that dude doesn't have milk for me. So she just made a little sigh when she woke up in the night, he said, and then she turned around and kept sleeping. So that was an amazing night. So this transition of switching caregiver really worked for us, and that worked for Leo really well as well. And I'm glad we did this because, sorry for the airplane, as soon as we did this switch of caregiver, then she, from that moment on, I think she basically slept really well, or if she did wake up, she went down really quickly. It wasn't a problem. And I think the main trigger for me was that we were going to go to see my family in Austria, and we were going to stay in my grandmother's house that is now empty, in one bedroom, the four of us. So we were going to have a mattress on the floor and sleep there while we were visiting my parents for about 3 weeks. And I knew that if Mila would have kept waking up like she did the half year before that, then Leo would wake up and then hell would be loose. Like if both kids would be up and crying and screaming all night, that would just be horrible. And for the sake of all of us, that was also one of the main triggers why I decided to end this breastfeeding journey and hope that she would sleep better. And it was entirely true. When we were there, she slept through. Completely slept through. So I think in this case, although I was very reluctant, for her, I think that was the main thing that kept her waking up. Because as soon as the night feeds were gone, she slept for the first time. And with Leo, I never had this issue before, that he wouldn't sleep throughout the night. He did that even when he was breastfed. So I definitely would say it's not the only reason why older babies don't sleep through the night. Because, like I said, with Leo, my older one, he was also fed all the way until, Mila's birth. And he definitely had many, many, many good nights. So he was sleeping through the night and he was breastfed. So there's not necessarily a correlation. So don't let people tell you that this is the way to solve everything. There are definitely other factors that could be at play. But having ruled out those other factors, I knew that with Mila, that might have been the only thing that could solve it. And that was actually, in this case, it was true. But I just want to put that out again, that it can really depend, and it's not, stopping to breastfeed doesn't solve every problem. And in our case, I think that was the main puzzle piece that was missing for her to sleep. But it doesn't have to be. So I would be very careful with stopping to feed if it's not what you truly want. And so from that moment on, the 23rd of June was the last time I fed. And then in Austria, we had an amazing experience. Both kids were sleeping next to each other on separate mattresses, and we were next to them. And that also led into a very smooth and perfect transition from when we then came home. We had them both share a room, and that was not the case before. So this worked really well. And if this is something you want to think about, if you have a similar case that maybe you're ready to stop feeding and your child is about the same age, then maybe thinking about this as a potential try out, to stop feed when you feel too full, and your breasts feel too engorged, but not too much, because then the more you feed, the more you encourage your breasts to produce milk. So your breasts are really like a production machine. And to give your baby what it needs, the comfort, of course, and make sure that they are hydrated enough during the day and eat enough, because obviously breastfeeding has a lot of minerals, vitamins. I mean, basically, I don't know. it is very nourishing. Don't take everything I say for, you know, piece of gold. I don't remember all the details. I just remember that it was very beneficial, and I did do my research, but now, years later, I don't remember these things anymore. The exact details, what exactly is in breast milk and what not. But making sure that they are hydrated and have enough food during the day, and then maybe accepting that there will be hiccups, or that there will be maybe anger coming up from your child, that will be upset, but just to gently say, you know, that's finished now, worked really well. And then if you are able to then hand it over after maybe the third night or whenever you feel it's right to the other caregiver that you have, maybe your husband, or I don't know, if you are a single mother, then maybe a friend that you trust, or a parent, your parent maybe, I don't know. You will have people maybe in your life that could take over. I think that really just helped us, and for Mila also, to accept, okay, that's it. So that's how we did it. So basically in 3 nights, 20th to the 23rd, yeah. In 3 nights we've been able to transition her from away from the breast to going to bed with her daddy next to him and to sleep, and having him as her source of comfort, and then just a lot of cuddles during the day, and understanding that just because the breastfeeding closeness is finished doesn't mean that your relationship to your child is, you know, losing something. It's just changing. And now I'm trying to make more effort to give her comfort and love in another way than just the breast. And you will be surprised, it's quite a habit actually. Sometimes I still find myself sitting her on my lap, pulling up my shirt and realizing, what am I doing? It's just a habit now after so many years. But yeah, that was my journey. I'm sorry if it was sometimes a bit rambly. I'm like this in general, but I hope you found it valuable. I hope this was helpful to you, and I wish you all the best for your journey, starting or stopping or being in between. There are just so many ways you can approach life, and there are so many different opinions, and I just wanted to share this perspective, and I hope that you will find encouragement wherever you are, and if it's in starting your journey or in stopping this journey. And keeping in mind that the age of the child and the needs of the child will then obviously make the difference in how you finish your breastfeeding journey. So there are definitely factors if the child is younger, and that you might have to observe, like giving them, what is it called? The packaged milk, the powdered milk. You know, there might be different needs that a child has. So just keep in mind Mila's age. She was much older already and eating and drinking. And for a younger child, the weaning process might look very different. So you might want to look at different journeys there. But yeah, again, lots of repetition, but I hope this was helpful to you, and thank you so much for listening. And I can't believe we actually managed it, and that it went so much better than I thought. So yeah, I hope to see you next time for another illustration and motherhood related video. Thank you. Bye.